Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It with Dr. Finney. And today we are going to be talking about a very difficult disorder called schizophrenia. Now this is a medical disorder, a mental health disorder that people don't want to talk about. In the media you hear stars talking about bipolar affective disorder, you hear them talking about depression, you hear them talking about anxiety as well. But you don't hear them talking about schizophrenia, and I always wonder why. What you hear on the TV is lots of negative things about schizophrenia. You know, somebody with schizophrenia has hurt somebody, has caused a big problem. That's what we hear about. There are a few films out there like The Soloist, A Beautiful Mind. These films have portrayed schizophrenia in a slightly more positive light, which is encouraging sometimes. So what is schizophrenia? Well, schizophrenia is a particular type of mental disorder that affects the brain. It affects the way people behave. It affects the way people, perceive the world. They tend to lose touch with reality. They experience what we call auditory hallucinations. Now, what are auditory hallucinations? Auditory hallucinations are voices that they hear within themselves that, I can't hear, you cannot hear. They might also experience what we call visual hallucinations. That is seeing things that are not real, seeing things that I can't see and you can't see. They might even experience what we call tactile hallucinations. That's very odd sensations. It could be like ants crawling up your skin, very uncomfortable situations. So these are some of the symptoms people with schizophrenia would experience. Other things that are quite distressing to them would be, they might think people are after them. They might get scared. They might think that people are plotting against them. They get very suspicious. They're very paranoid. They basically lose touch with reality. So these group of symptoms are what we call positive symptoms of schizophrenia. We have a group of symptoms that are also called negative symptoms. And these include the person might be very amotivated, that's not motivated to do anything. They just want to retreat into themselves. They want to stay in bed all day, basically self-isolating. Let the world pass them by. They're happy like that. But these are not good symptoms because they can be prolonged and they can last for a long time. But you know what? The good news is schizophrenia is treatable. That is the good news. It is treatable. So that is really positive. But when do we diagnose schizophrenia? When do we say somebody might have schizophrenia? At what stage in their lives? Now we know that there are groups of kids who have childhood psychosis, but schizophrenia tends to be diagnosed from about the age of 18 years old in boys, and it tends to be diagnosed a lot later in women, in girls, from the ages of the 20s into the early 30s. That's when women tend to present more with the symptoms of schizophrenia. Okay, but who are those people who can get schizophrenia? Somebody would ask me, can I just get schizophrenia? Well, schizophrenia is diagnosed in 1% of the total population. So that's 1%. But there are groups of people who are slightly more prone to getting it. Now, these group of people include people who have, it doesn't mean you're going to get it, it just means that you're a little bit more susceptible to getting it. So these group of people include people with a family history of schizophrenia, okay, people who have experienced extreme difficulty, for instance, childhood sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, very difficult family circumstances, people who have been in refugee camps, people who have to fight for survival. So you can imagine how difficult these situations are and how it's very possible to develop any mental illness at all. Right. So people would ask, fine, it's a very extreme mental disorder. They may present with difficult, challenging behaviors. How do we treat them? How do we get them help? If you think somebody close to you, or a friend, or a work colleague, for instance, if you believe that they are developing, or if you think they have some of the symptoms that I have mentioned today, it's very, very, very important that you try and get them help, because the individuals themselves may not necessarily believe they are ill. As I said, they lose touch with reality. So it's very possible that they would think that what they're feeling is real. So you must be able to help them get help. And your first point of call would be with a doctor or any mental health services. Any hospital at all, you will be able to get help. But the most important thing is that you make contact with somebody who you believe will be able to help you, will be able to get this person treatment. Extremely important. If you don't know what to do, send me a private message. I will put you in touch with the right services. Talking about treatment of schizophrenia, what do we do? Quite a few things can be used to treat schizophrenia. You know, you can educate the person, educate the family so that they are aware of symptoms. The doctor is going to do a proper physical examination. Make sure it's not something physical that's causing some of these symptoms. And when I say that, it could be, you know, proper physical examination, blood tests, etc. These need to be done. And don't forget, one thing I didn't mention, another trigger to schizophrenia is drugs. Things like hallucinogens, cannabis, LSD, magic mushrooms. All of these things can actually trigger schizophrenia in somebody who is predisposed. And most important is one thing that we use to treat schizophrenia is antipsychotic medication. Antipsychotic medication. These are drugs that are used to balance the imbalance that we have in the brains when people with schizophrenia, what people with schizophrenia experience. There are a group of drugs that will take away a lot of the symptoms. You know, it's so important that people get treatment, because if you have schizophrenia, it's not a death sentence. You can still have a full life. You can get married, you can have children, you can have everything you want. But you do need the support of the community, of friends, family, and individuals. So really, it is my job, it's your job. We need to start destigmatizing schizophrenia. The way we treat somebody with high blood pressure, the way we treat somebody with diabetes, asthma, we need to start, moving forward and taking people with schizophrenia as well. It's not your fault, it's an illness. Let's treat you, let's help you. And believe you me, the outcome is different when they have that level of support. I hope I've been able to tell you a little bit about this serious mental illness and thrown a bit of positive light on it so that you know there's treatment, and somebody with such a diagnosis can still have a full and complete life. So this is Dr. Finney. Thank you again for watching, and I hope I see you again in our next episode of Let's Talk About It.